guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to have a speed test between the iPhone 4S on iOS 6 and on iOS 9. I'm sure that the iPhone 4S on iOS 6 would do pretty well, but I want to see how much is the difference between iOS 6 and iOS 9. And yes, I do understand iOS 9 is a little newer software and it has a little more features to load, but still, it's a pretty interesting video to see the difference, so let's get started. I'm just going to confirm that both of these are iPhone 4Ss. As you can see, it has Siri. Okay, and this phone as well, I have not activated Siri, but I'll just show you the option. Siri is right there. So both of them are iPhone 4Ss. Let's clear the app switcher. All right. And let's get started. We're going to run through a couple of native Apple apps and then move on to third party. The issue with third party, I had a really hard time finding apps which would support iOS 6, so I can't show you any benchmark apps because all of them require a minimum of iOS 8. So let's just work with what we have. So let's get started. All right, let's start with phone, an app which we use innumerable times a day. So 1, 2, 3, iOS 6. Let's go to calendar, iOS 6. How about photos, iOS 6. Camera, iOS 6. iOS 9 is not that behind, maybe a second or two. Let's open Maps. iOS 6 is instantly ready. iOS 9 is still loading up. All right, let's open Weather. Yes, iOS 6 anytime. Reminders. iOS 6 is ready. How about notes? iOS 6 is ready. All right, let's write a new note. So which is more responsive? iOS 6. Okay, let's move on to music. iOS 6. Do note that this has to load Apple Music, but it's a pretty long wait. So if you are using a 4S on iOS 9, you must be a pretty patient person, and I applaud you for that. It's really, it takes a lot of patience to use an iPhone 4S and iOS 9. And the thing is that the iPhone 4S and iOS 6 it's pretty snappier just by scrolling, and a couple of things when you open apps, when you need to just click that photo in the perfect shot, you have to wait for iOS 9. Whereas iOS 6 is a bit snappy, and those couple of milliseconds add up over time, and the user experience of using a 4S on iOS 6 is extremely good, whereas the experience of using the same device on iOS 9 is pretty bad. So let's move on. Let's go to some web apps. Let's open the iTunes Store. And it's iOS 6 again. Yes, iOS 6 is completely loaded and ready. And iOS 9, it's a bit stuttery. While scrolling, you can see a bit stutter, but whereas iOS 6 is silky smooth. Let's choose this. It's iOS 6. Let's choose another one. Again, it's iOS 6. Just those milliseconds, that smoothness in iOS 6 makes using the 4S a pleasure. Even though it's a pretty old phone, but using it on iOS 6 is a real pleasure. How about the App Store? And it's iOS 6 again. The only issue with using the 4S and iOS 6 is app support. Whereas iOS 9, it has app support, but as I said, the experience is pretty bad. Let's try to open an app, for example, Golden Rage. Okay, I didn't click that. Let's try AZ Rockets. Again, iOS 6. See that? It's already loaded and ready for iOS 6. But iOS 9 isn't that quite behind, maybe 2-3 seconds behind. Okay, now the major difference comes when you move to third-party apps. So let's try Google Maps. Did you see that stutter on iOS 9? That millisecond, this waiting time is what irritates people. This is what destroys the 4S and iOS 9. All right, now let's move on to Subway Surfers. That same stutter on iOS 9. And I'm sure that the game on the iOS 6 version would load much faster than the iOS 9 version. And yep, they're both loading up, and you see iOS 6 is almost done and ready to play. Yes, iOS 6 is ready to play, and iOS 9 is still loading up, and now it's ready to play. Okay, but that starter is pretty bad. All right, now let's go to Safari, and let's go to, all right, let's just go to apple.com again. Look at that starter to just close a tab. It's horrible. Okay, let's go to apple.com in 3, 2, 1, and the iPhone 4S is done. Although it does support an older version of Safari, so um, websites that use the modern search engine do tend to load vaguely. For example, the iPhone 10 is supposed to appear in the middle, not on the left. Look at iOS 9. It struggles even to scroll. Right, as you can see, the iPhone 10 should appear in the middle, not on the left. But that scrolling itself on iOS 9 is just horrible. You can't even, it's not productive. You can't even use this website. Look at that. Let's click, I want to learn about the product with iPhone 8. So let's learn about it. And iOS 6 is ready. It's so productive. Even though this phone is so old, if you can just downgrade your phone from iOS 9 to iOS 6, it's an extremely good phone even in 2018. Whereas iOS 9, it's struggling to even load that. It's a pretty bad dip in performance, even though this runs an older version of Safari. I mean, look at that. The scrolling itself on iOS 6 is so much smoother, and you have to scroll a couple of times to get to the top of iOS 9. For example, let's scroll together. It's pretty fast on iOS 6, whereas iOS 9, it tends to lag up. Okay, let's try going back, and iOS 9 is pretty there. Oh, that's good. All right, let's go to another page. Let's try the iPhone 10. And yes, iPhone 4S is almost done. It's struggling to load a lot of animations, the 4S. As you can see, this iPhone 10 has a lot of animation in it. So the 4S does struggle with websites that have a lot of animation. That's why it chose apple.com. Whereas iOS 9, as you can see, does play the animation, whereas the 4S just cannot play that animation. So it tends to lag up a bit, but overall it's pretty good experience on the 4S, despite it cannot load your animations, but overall it's pretty responsive. You can go throughout the entire page, no issues. But yes, the page does tend to reload a bit on iOS 6, but iOS 9 is absolutely horrible. You don't know where you are, and you don't know what you're looking at. So it's pretty bad on Safari with iOS 9. So let's try multitasking, all right? Look at the lag. Even to get into multitasking, it suffers. All right, let's go to camera. 3, 2, 1. And iOS 6 is ready. iOS 9 not far behind. Okay, let's open the App Store. Do note that both of these devices just have 512 MB of RAM, so you can't expect anything out of them. So both of them do reload, and iOS 6 is ready. iOS 9 still tends to reload for a pretty long time. This waiting period is something that has really bogged down the 4S in terms of usability in 2018. So let's try phone. Yeah, phone has no issues. Let's try something else. Let's load up maps, which would use location. So I'm sure both of them would reload. And yes, both of them do reload. Correct. So overall, you can see that the iPhone 4S has a much better performance when it comes to using the same device on iOS 6, whereas iOS 9 on the same 4S is absolutely pathetic. I mean, it just can't hold up in 2018 standards in terms of usability, in terms of basic tasks, even these basic apps tend to reload and tend to take some time to load up. Even if you're going to use an iPhone 4S and iOS 9, I'm sure you're going to miss that perfect moment by the time your camera opens. Whereas if you open it on iOS 6, you're ready to go anytime. Whereas on iOS 9, it tends to focus, it tends to lag up. So yeah, I hope you guys like the video, and please let me know in the comment section below your thoughts on what do you think, iOS 9 or iOS 6 on the 4S, which do you think is better? And if the choice was yours, which phone would you pick to use for a day in 2018? So thank you for watching. I hope you liked the video. Please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next one.